Alrighty, Wolfpack, let's dive right on into the QBs here. I'm going to switch on over. At the top, there's really no question. It's Kyler Murray. There's not much else to be said here. He gets the Jaguars. I mean, a cakewalk of all cakewalk matchups. He is the number one ECR, but why? Why wouldn't he be? 400 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. It's a weekly occurrence. He's a cheat code. Lamar Jackson also rushing for 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards on the ground. He's the de facto running back at this point. So he's got immense upside in a cakewalk matchup against Detroit right there at number 2. And you're looking at all these matchups. So there's a ton of great ones. Russell Wilson at Minnesota. They're giving up top 5 in terms of fantasy points on the season so far to QBs. Or maybe it's just wide receivers. They're right in the middle of the pack there at QB. Let me pull that up right here. So in terms of the Vikings giving up points, they're actually, number 4. So I was right. It's running backs in the middle of the pack there. So number 4 in terms of points allowed to QBs getting bombed on a weekly basis. They face some good competition, but still, they can be beat quite easily through the air. And again, get those questions on in, guys. I will answer them all as we go. So I think Russell Wilson in for another 3+ touchdown day. Pat Mahomes against the Chargers, nothing against him. It's just that the other 3 are near equal in terms of talents. And he gets the Chargers, who have been very stiff against the pass. They're actually the second fewest points allowed to the quarterback position. That still has shootout narrative written over it, maybe. But we also said that about the Cowboys and the Chargers, and that just ended up being a gross defensive battle. I'm not sure exactly what's happening over there with these Chargers. A little bit nervous about Herbert, but I'm not selling or anything of that nature. Then you move down into QB, clear QB1s, but not quite like number 1 scorer upside, in my opinion, at least. Josh Allen facing Washington football team. They've been solid on defense, but nothing that can't be beat. In fact, they're 14th, so right in the middle of the pack against QBs, and they haven't faced anyone all that solid. In fact, we saw Daniel Jones rush for 90-ish yards and a TD against them. What do you think Josh Allen, one of the best running quarterbacks in the league, is going to do to this defense? I think they're highly overrated because they have Chase Young. They have some big names, but they're really not that great of a defense. So not scared about Josh Allen at all. In fact, he might even belong above Pat Mahomes the more I think about it. I think this is a big rebound game, a guy I would be buying low on as fast as I could at this point. Jalen Hurts, though, against Dallas, Monday night game. Dallas's defense looked a bit stiffer there against Justin Herbert, but I'm not too worried about it. I think this division rivalry has shootout written all over it. And even if not, Jalen Hurts was horrible this last week. Didn't look good. Wasn't making all the throws, and yet he still finished with 22 fantasy points despite only throwing for 190 yards and 1 TD. That's because of that rushing upside, 82 yards there. Such a high floor given that Konami code upside, and the ceiling is even higher if and when he starts to light up. A defense in the secondary is all the makings of being lit up. Tom Brady against the Rams, scary Rams defense. I get it, but Brady is on a mission. He's going for records this year, 9 touchdowns through first 2 weeks. I think we're going to get at least another 3 here. AB's situation could come into play here, but ultimately I'm not that concerned about this Rams defense even being on the road. I think Brady will sling it all over them. Herbert against KC, shootout narrative, should have to sling. But again, pretty disappointing so far when you pull it up. You look at his games, 14 and 17 points, QB 26-21. Not what we were expecting from a sophomore blow-up as this new scheme, not quite as explosive as we were expecting. I think he'll come into his own. I think he's a good buy low as well. Dak Prescott, not -3 ECR, a little bit lower on him, just because last week was just a gross reminder that this team might not be the pathetic, awful defense that's getting bombed week in and week out, and they're going to have to chuck it 60+ times. They're the games that they don't have to throw it more than 40, they're not going to. And that was a clear sign of that. I think against Philly, they could probably keep it reined in. They could probably win that one pretty handily, but we'll see. I just don't, after that huge first week, it's going to be a little bit more of a roller coaster than I was expecting for Dak Prescott. And then you move into the remaining QB1s, Matthew Stafford at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay gets this huge reputation as this ferocious defense, and they are very good on the ground. But ultimately, they've given up the 9th most points to quarterbacks since getting banged up in the secondary there in week 1. Teams know they have to throw against them. In fact, McVay, dating back historically, there's an absurd tweet about how he's only thrown it only ran it, I think, 60 times his last 5 times against Tampa Bay, where he's thrown about 600. It's a crazy run-pass ratio, and it's certainly, if Darrell Henderson's banged up, you got to expect Matty Stafford to just rip that ball. So he's he might belong in this tier above these other guys. Aaron Rodgers as well, looking like his vintage game, but it also came against Detroit. Meanwhile, San Fran's giving up, towards the bottom of the pack in fantasy points to their QBs. Let me look that up real quick. 49ers. You know what, though? Goff lit them up. And then we saw Hurts, even though he didn't have a great game, put up over 22. So there is some upside here for Rodgers. Sunday night prime game. Looks like he's back and locked and loaded. But the guy I'm much higher on than the ECR this week, Justin Fields, +6 ECR at my QB 12. The Konami upside is just too real with this guy. The fastest 40 beyond only Michael Vick and RG3. You saw it with 10 rush attempts. He didn't light anything on fire. But in the preseason, over 4 quarters of action, he was right around 22 fantasy points per game. I think against Cleveland, team that we saw Tyrod Taylor about to go off for 20-plus points until he got hurt. They can be had, especially by mobile quarterbacks. Mahomes, destroyed these guys in week 1. I do not think it's a great secondary. I think that's one of the more overrated defenses in the league. I think Fields could have a nice big day welcoming him to the NFL, his first start. And then Kirk Cousins, Seattle, a game they're going to need to throw. That's kind of been the narrative for them. And as you can see, just steady top 15 quarterback production. In fact, top 13, 22 for QB 13, 25 for QB 6, and another gorgeous matchup versus the Seahawks, one of the worst secondaries in the league. A team that can put up points and oodles. They're going to need to be chasing points. Yet again, Kirk Cousins turned out to be one of those ultimate high floor QBs to start this year. And then rounding it out here, loved what Teddy Bridgewater's been doing, over 20 fantasy points in back-to-back games. Quarterback 12 in fantasy right now, gets the pathetic Jets, who have been surprisingly decent against QBs. That's also partly because of the competition. Darnold and Mac Jones, nothing too stiff. I do not think the secondary is anything special. If Sutton is actually banged up, I saw he popped up as questionable today. I think that's just much ado about nothing. Bridgewater, one of my favorite streams, still out there in about 20, only 25% owned. I really, really like Bridgewater this week as a streamer, as a flyer, to throw for another 300 yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns. He actually leads the league in 20-plus yard pass attempts right now. Insane stat right there. But Darnold, been getting it done. Houston's defense isn't quite as bad as it seemed they would be, but I also think they're a little bit overrated in terms of their points allowed to quarterbacks. Their secondary is still absolutely abysmal. So the fact that they've only allowed the 17th most points to quarterbacks, I think that's going to flip this week, and we'll see why here. I think Sam Darnold, Thursday Night Football, a great streamer action, but not far behind is Daniel Jones against Atlanta. I guess I'm a little lower than the ECR. He's at 13. I think that's a bit rich, but look at what he's done so far. We pull up his game log. 21 and 29, QB 14, QB 4. Did not expect that against Washington. A lot of that came on the rush yards. So ultimately, that's a little bit of a concern here. But I still think this guy is got the Konami type upside that we didn't, hammer his rushing prop no matter what you do each and every week. Atlanta is also giving up the most points to the quarterback position. And so that's just something to consider there for sure. 1 second. I know I just got to fix this overlay. Thank you, Tunes, for shooting me that text. I had it all done and loaded. I just forgot to click it. So here we go. Back to the ranking show. Appreciate your patience there with that, guys. And then rounding out these fringe QB1s, high-end QB2s, Derek Carr, 7th most passing yards in the NFL history through 2 games. Impressive showing. Tannehill as well, 347. That's just going to be up and down, though. I kind of want to bench this guy, 4 spots below the ECR if I can. Indy's not that ferocious of a secondary by any means, but I'm not a guy I'm hoping to start. And then you're getting into the desperation flyers. Now, I am much higher on Jared Goff as a Hail Mary, as you can see, and it was a tale of 2 halves on Monday night, but still, the guy's been slinging 30 for QB3 and 19, QB15. That's pretty damn good, though. Gets a Baltimore secondary that's been absolutely atrocious so far through the first 2 weeks after losing, who was it? Was it Marlon Humphreys? Marcus Peters to the turf. They've given up the 5th most points to QBs. They're certainly going to put up their points, and that's going to kind of be a nice narrative for Goff. So if you're looking for a desperation streamer, as you can see, +8 ECR, I'd have him above Burrow at QB 20. Heineke, some Konami upside, a little bit higher than on him than the ECR, more than Baker at 22, Big Ben at 23. Yeah, the chest pain, I might have to bump him down a little bit more. Carson Wentz, I don't know that this news nugget is anything new yet. The latest was he's still experiencing soreness. Okay. Both ankles, it's worse in one of them than the other, but he's not going to have surgery. So we'll see. If if he could be out there. Like that matchup a lot against Tennessee, but the injury will play a big role there. And then you're getting into the range where it's, do you really want Trevor Lawrence, even it's a time they're going to be chasing points? Tua is not playing. Off to X out of him here. Zach Wilson, he's going to get picked again a million times by those Chiefs. By those Broncos. So, and how could you trust Jameis Winston? Like, this is just gross range. Stay away from those guys. Yeah, go to Jared Goff if you need a desperation streamer. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments. Check out some more videos and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.